Hi there, welcome to math class. In this video we are looking at finding a common denominator. And this is not in your practice workbook. This is a lesson that I've added because it's such an important skill. So this one does not line up with your Tabe Tutor practice workbook lessons, but it will help you in those lessons. To do this lesson, you need two flashcards, least common multiple and lowest common denominator. And then you have 4 of these Venn diagrams. This is item 14. So you will need 4 of those and the 2 flashcards to complete this lesson with me. And those are in your math toolkit that you got from your instructor. Okay, let's give our page a title. And then I'll rearrange my pieces a little bit. We are going to find a common denominator. Okay, find a common denominator. That's the title of this lesson. And I'm going to pull this piece out for just a minute so that I can really focus on my flashcards. And I think I'm going to pull this guy down here. So let's start with least common multiple, and then we'll do lowest common denominator. These two things are the same thing if you're talking about fractions. Least common multiple is very often abbreviated as LCM. There's an acronym, LCM, just as lowest common denominator is LCD. So sometimes people will just use those abbreviations instead of writing out the whole phrase. Those are pretty long. Okay, the least common multiple is the smallest multiple or iteration that two numbers have in common. And the lowest common denominator is the least common multiple of 2 or more numbers. Okay. So let me show you with a Venn diagram how this concept works, and we're going to do several of these. So hang with me here. Let's say that our example, and I do want to write it out in word form. Find the lowest common denominator, the LCD, for 6 and 8. Okay. So what you do, you take your 6 and your 8 and you place those as labels on your Venn diagram. So we are doing the multiples of 6 and then the multiples of 8. And I'm going to do this both ways. Eventually we will do this the way I'm doing it on the right. We're not going to draw a Venn diagram every time we need this. But while you're learning the concept, I want you to see what's really happening here, why it's a common denominator. So let's list the first 10 iterations of 6. 6 times 1, 6 times 2, 6 times 3. I'm going to go 10 times. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I'm sorry, I meant 60. And I'm going to put an ellipsis there to show that that continues as long as I care to go. And then the same with 8, the first 10 of them. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 54, 56, that's 7, 64, 72, and 80. And I'm going to show that that continues on. These are called multiples. And you guys have been doing this with me now for a long time. When we do long division, we have to list all the multiples of the number. Okay, so what I'm looking for are common multiples. There's a 24, and there's a 24. And I believe that's the only one that's on this list. So, the common multiple, actually it's not the only one. Did you see the one I missed? 48 is common. Both of them have the 48. So the way this Venn works, you put the common ones in the middle. Both of them have a 24 and a 48. That is in that shared inner space right here. They share those two. Those are common multiples. All right. The 6 has a 6, a 12, 1830, 36, 42, 54, and 60. And then the 8 has its own set of values, its own set of multiples. But the common ones are the ones that you and I are interested in. We want to look at this inner part, and we want the least one that's in the inner part. So the least common multiple is 24. And that means that the lowest common denominator for 6 and 8 is the 24. Okay, let me grab another Venn and we'll practice another one. Let me put it right here. I'm going to move this one this way just so my eyes can see the difference. Let me also put a line there so we have another example. We want to find in this one find the lowest common denominator LCD. I'll spell it out this time and then I'll find the LCD for 10 and 30. And you may already know that one. You may be able to look at that and know what it is. If so, that's great. So let's list our multiples of 10. And this time I think I'm just going to do 6 of them. And 30. So you take the two numbers that you want to compare, or really not, we're not comparing the numbers, we're getting the multiples of those numbers. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. and that list would carry on if I wanted it to. So I have 30, 60. You're basically just counting by threes here and adding a 0. Okay, so let's look for common ones in the list that we've generated. We have a 30 in both of those. We have a 60 in both of those. And if I had allowed my list to continue, every one of those 30 ones would show up in the tens list at some point. But that would take a very long time. So let's just diagram this one. We have 10 and we have 30. And the common ones are 30 and 60 in the list that I have. The 10 also has some others, and so does the 30. And I really don't like this example because all of these would eventually be over here because all of those are divisible by 10. But for the moment, I'm just going to leave them because this list did not go all the way up to 90. That's why we're not seeing the 90. We just stopped too soon. But it's okay to illustrate the point that I want you to see. Here are the common ones that we've found so far. And keep in mind, if I had just kept going, all of these would eventually have moved to that middle circle. But of these that we have, the lower one is the 30. So the lowest common denominator, the LCD, or the lowest common multiple, would be the 30. Up here, the LCD was the 24. Okay, let's try another one. I gave you 4 of these VINs, so we'll use those. The next one I want to do is 10 and 4. So we'll write that down. Example. Find the lowest common denominator for 10 and 4. So let me put in the multiples of 10 and 4. 10, I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80, and I think I'll stop right there. And then for 4, I'll go the 8 times as well. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and 32. Actually, let me carry on just a little bit because I want to show you at least 2 of them. So I'll take that one on to 40. So common multiples, I have a 20 in both. I have a 40 in both. So this one would be 20 and 40. Okay. The multiples of 10 that didn't work for the 4. And here we are again. This time I'm going to put the 80 in here. Even though we don't see it in the for list, it would be in there. And I just don't like not doing that. That's improper, so I don't want to do it. Then over here we have the 4, the 8, the 12, the 16, the 20 is common, 24, 28, 32, and 36. So these would work for the 4 but not for the 10. The lowest common multiple for both is the 20. Remember, common is in this space. The shared values is in the common area. The lowest common multiple is a 20. So the LCD for these is a 20. One more VIN, and then I want to show you how to do this if you have 3 or more numbers to find an LCD. So example for this one, we're still on the Venn diagram, is the lowest common denominator for 12 and 6. And this is an interesting one. When we graph it, you'll see. So I'm going to list my 12s, and I'm going to go to 5 this time. 12, 24, 36, 48, and 60. So let's do 5 iterations. And then on this one, let's do maybe 10 iterations. So I have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. Actually, I'm going to stop right here at 42. Okay, so let's look for the common ones. I see 12 in both. I see 24 in both. I see 36 in both. And let me carry this one just a little bit further. I should have listened to myself to start with. 48, 54, and 60. So I have the 48 in both, the 60 in both. So when I go to put this one on the graph, look at what happens. 12, 24, 36, 48, and 60, those are the multiples of 12, are all going to work for the 6 as well. Now the 6 has a few that are different than the 12, but there are none that are unique to 12. If it works for 12, it works for 6, is what this is telling me. If it's in the line for the 12, it will be in the line for the 6, because 6 is a factor of 12. So this VIN is a little bit unusual. There's nothing unique to the 12 that the 6 doesn't also share. But the lowest common multiple of the two, or the LCD, is the 12. Now you may be thinking, this lady's crazy. If I can do it this way, why do I need that Venn diagram? Why would I want to do it on this thing? Answer to that is we don't. When we actually start finding lowest common denominators, I'm going to use the list method. We're going to list our factors and find the common one. But the Venn diagram sometimes shows up on tests. Your children may bring this problem home. So I wanted to show you both ways while we're on the subject. It also lets you get a little bit familiar with how a Venn diagram works. But we are not going to be drawing those Venns. And when I need to spell that for you. I am saying a V-E-N-N, a Venn diagram. It's used to compare and contrast. You might even see this in a reading lesson or in a science lesson. So it's good to get practice using the Venn, and just in case your children or grandchildren might bring this home, you may be able to help them with it. So here's one more example, and we're not using a Venn on this one. What if we have to find the lowest common denominator of 2, 4, 8, and 10? Now if I did that on a Venn diagram, it would have 4 circles, and we would have to figure out what goes in each section. It would be a nightmare. So we're just going to use the list method here. There's 2, 4, 8, and 10. 2, 4, 8, and 10. So let's list the multiples. And I'm going to go, I think 10 times. I may have to go further. I will have to go further than that. I'm not going to do the same number on all of them. How about that? Let me go this far and stop. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 30, no, sorry, 28, I forgot 7, and 32. I already see a 20 here and a 20 here. So let's try the 8. 16, 24, whoops, 20 is not in that one. 32, 40. I'm going to stop there for just a minute. 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, so the 20 would work down here, but look at what's happened. It does not work for the 8. So 20 is not a common factor for all, a common multiple for all of these. If it doesn't work for the 8, you can't use it. So that means I'm going to have to continue my list at least for a couple of these. I've got a 40 that's showing up in these 2 lines. There's a 40 and there's a 40. So if I can get the 40 to show up in the other 2 lines, I'm in good shape. So the 4 would be a 36. If you carry it on, there's the 40. Okay, I'm liking that. That is a third match. If we can get the 40 to show up in that 2 line, we're good. And I know it will because it's an even number. But let me carry it on out there and show you what I'm talking about. This line is counting by 2s. And finally, there he is. It shows up in that last column or last row. So this is the lowest common multiple. The 20 almost worked, but it wouldn't work for the 4. I'm sorry, the 8. So we have to keep going until we get something that works for all of them. And these are not easy to do. 40 would be the lowest common multiple there. Okay, again, this is not in your TABE workbook, so there's not a lesson that you need to do. We will eventually be using this in the lessons that we're working on, but I wanted to take the time. This is one of those skills that takes more than just mentioning it in the lesson. I didn't want to just gloss over it. I needed to do more than just mention it. So we will be using this skill, but there is no TABE practice for this particular lesson. The next lesson that we need to do is back in the TABE book, and it's about equivalent fractions. So I will see you soon for that lesson, and I hope you have a really good day. Bye-bye.